beginning in 4 minutes, just at 7 when we say we're starting. And if anybody is wanting to get a book, you might want to run right out right now and get it, because they might be all gone before the end of walking in. 1 book, 2 books, 3 books. Yeah, if you want 4 books, you might want to run out right now. Listen, I'm willing to sell my copy also. The only thing is you have to go through all my notes that are in it. It's Thanks, yeah. Thanks. So folks, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Great to see you all. It's really a very special honor to welcome Rabbi Dr. Abraham Skorka with us here at Ohev Shalom. I want to welcome each and every one of you, and a very special welcome to colleague and friend and neighbor, Reverend Joe McLaughlin from our neighboring. You know, we live in the parish of St. Vincent de Paul. Anybody ask me what parish I'm in, that's my parish. And also, I want to welcome parishioners, other clergy that are here from St. Vincent de Paul. I know that there are members of the parish here tonight, because as I look through the list of RSVPs, there are more names than just Cohen, Shapiro's, and Finkelsteins here. So I want to offer a very special thanks to Idel Wood. We all know Idel over here. Idel, maybe just raise your hand. Idel somehow, yeah, you know, Idel is worthy of a round of applause. I don't know how Idel does this, but she somehow discovered that Rabbi Skorka was living and working and teaching in the Philadelphia area and made the initial contact with Rabbi Skorka. And Idel is also our host and sponsoring the dessert reception that is following the presentation tonight. So Idel, we are indebted to you. And our thanks to you. Also, I want to say thanks to Carl Goldstein in providing transportation for Rabbi Skorka tonight. There was supposed to be a special presentation by our cantor tonight, Cantor Annalise is not here tonight. She was sick yesterday morning. She's sick again tonight. She was going to present a piece that had great meaning for Rabbi Skorka's mentor, Rabbi Marshall Meyer. The Hebrew version is Kol Ha'ulam Kulo Gesher Tsar Ma'od, that the whole world is a very narrow bridge. V'ha'ikar lo lefached klal, and the essential point is not to ever be afraid. She was going to sing it in Hebrew and then in Spanish. But unfortunately, she's not feeling well. So just imagine Cantor Annalise singing in Spanish right now. And, I also have to say, Janie wasn't feeling well tonight, so is not here. But thankfully that we have the live streaming, so I know that we're joined by many others who are with us here, connected by technology. So Rabbi Skorka has recently been appointed as university professor at St. Joseph's University, working within the Institute for Jewish Catholic Relations. So growing up in Philadelphia, I grew up in Philadelphia, Rabbi Skorka, and St. Joe's, it was known as St. Joe's in those days, at least amongst Philadelphians. It was actually St. Joe's College, was always spoken of with very high regard in my family because my father was a big fan of the Big Five. It's the basketball league in which St. Joe's plays. And he had a special affinity for St. Joe's. I think he actually wanted me to go to college at St. Joe's. I don't know what would have happened to me, but, and you know what the motto of St. Joe's sports teams are? The hawk will never die. The Eagles, on the other hand, it was 24/7 at halftime. Don't make it worse. I was going to say, unless there's a miracle happening, but there's no miracle happening. Rabbi Skorka was ordained at the Seminario Rabbinico Latinoamerico, founded by his mentor, Rabbi Marshall Meyer, in Buenos Aires, where he later became the rector and professor of Talmud and Bible. After his rabbinic ordination, he took a road less traveled, or it might be more accurate to say a road never traveled before, that Rabbi Skorka received his PhD in chemistry and is published widely in the field of biophysics. If you look up Rabbi Abraham Skorka in Google, it'll say biophysicist, rabbi, author. He may be the only rabbi biophysicist in the world today. I assume that there are no conventions of rabbi biophysicists that you go to annually. And he also served as the rabbi of a community, B'nai Tikva community. So, friends, you all know the story of Rabbi Skorka's friendship with the auxiliary bishop of Buenos Aires, George Mario Bergoglio. You know that in the Catholic Church, there is much more room for advancement than there is in the rabbinate here. So the good bishop went on to become the archbishop and the cardinal, and now, of course, the pope. And Rabbi and Pope have maintained their friendship to this day. And in the picture, in the back of the book, you can see the picture of the two of them. Can you see this? In this picture, Rabbi Skorka is the only one wearing a yarmulke, but as the archbishop was promoted, he wears one as well now, right? First as a cardinal, and then as the pope. So it's really a great honor just to have Rabbi Dr. Skorka with us. To tell you the truth, his topic was incidental to just his being here tonight. You know, years ago when we had Elie Wiesel here one night, it didn't matter what Elie Wiesel talked about. It was an evening with Elie Wiesel. And I first called this an evening with Rabbi Skorka. It didn't matter what you would talk about, and I asked you then, you know, what your topic might be a few weeks ago. If you would have said that your topic was biophysics in Talmudic literature, you know, I'm sure it would have been interest to a few people, but as it turns out, your topic is the importance of dialogue in a broken world. Can you imagine a topic more necessary for us to hear tonight the importance of dialogue in a broken world. Yeah, there could not be a more timely topic or a more needed subject in the world we find ourselves in today. So it's now my great honor and pleasure to present to you Rabbi Dr. Abraham Skorka. Rabbi.
So good evening for all of you. Of course that you are going to feel in my English that English is my fourth language. It's not my first language, it's not my mother tongue, just the fourth. Really, I prepared a little speech about the importance of dialogue in a fractured world. I was inspired by the last things that occurred in here, not far from here, in Pittsburgh, in the same state, and what is going on nowadays in the world. Having as in my mind, having a whole story about dialogue that especially I shared with the current Pope Francis. We began more than 20 years ago, approaching one to the other. Really, he approached me, and we worked a lot on this topic. After he became Pope, our friendship, because there is a friendship now between he and me, when we exchange emails, is we begin writing one to the other, my dear brother, and everything between us is very sincere. There is a real love from one towards the other. I was invited by the Vatican, of course, by the order given by the Pope, to be part of the official delegation of the Vatican when the Pope visited a Holy Land. Holy Land means Jordan, Palestine, and Israel. And there is a whole story how this trip was organized. This just to tell you, to give you to the picture before you what is my real relationship with him. It's not something formal, it's a real friendship, it's a real brotherhood. He knows about my family. He writes to me about his feelings, about his thoughts. For instance, when occurred what occurred in Pittsburgh, is the professor in St. Joseph's that I'm working with him, Professor Cunningham, Motzei Shabbat, he called me and told me, look, we are going to prepare a special service to pay honor to the memory of the people killed in this terrible attack. Maybe that you can connect with through email, that you can say to your good friend to send us for tomorrow, because the first idea was to have this service, this memory service on Sunday. At the end, it was on Monday. Write to him in order to, if you wish, if you do consider that this is proper to do, write to him to get a message from him. And he stressed me the idea, the point that the Jewish congregation, Cunningham said, must feel that we are alongside them, that they are not alone, that we are very close to the Jewish congregation in this moment of grief and of pain. And so I wrote to my good friend. After I did that, it was about 11 at night, after I wrote to him, asking from him a message and writing to him, it's very important for the Pittsburgh congregation, especially, but at large for all the American Jewry, to feel that the Catholic Church is close to them in this special moment. Is after I wrote, I thought, oi, Gewalt. If he sent to me a special message, I have to put this message in the media, because it's the Pope, it's the message of the Pope. I had my doubts exactly how to do that. Of course, that I would ask Cunningham how to do that. I would ask the help of the university, how to contact the media and to put this in the media, but it's not the same. So the idea that came in my brain was maybe that tomorrow in the morning, tomorrow means on Sunday in the morning, he's going to express a message, a special message, referring to what occurred in Pittsburgh, as I did. As he did. So after I read the message, I felt, oh, this is a special message. For sure that he received my email before he prepared this message. It was inspired in the details that I transmitted him, to be close affectionately to the Pittsburgh congregation. And we use his message on Monday, on the service that the university organized for Monday, really the Institute for Jewish Catholic Relations. And on Tuesday, I received a new mail from him, an answer from him, and he told me, I received your email. He confirmed me that he took into consideration my email to write and to prepare his special message. And if you are going to see this message, you are going to see a special warmth from him towards the victims of Pittsburgh. So this is only one anecdote. I have many, many anecdotes. The trip to Israel was because Perez, someone transmitted to Perez that the Pope has a very good friend in Argentina. And Perez was one of the first world leaders to meet Francis, and a special chemistry, as we used to say in Spanish, I suppose that the same is in English, were between Perez and Francis, because each one of them recognized something special in the other, but the special is the common denominator of this special thing is the sincere commitment in order to work for the improvement of human reality. And so I was in the middle of the first steps, and I spoke. I remember how in the Vatican I spoke with the Pope regarding this trip. And okay, I have a lot of other anecdotes. For instance, that I lived 10 days in the Vatican and I was invited to eat in his table because he eats in the restaurant of the Vatican in the presence of other people. So I sat during the 3 daily meals on his right, and I arrived in Chol HaMoed Sukkot, and so I had to recite Kiddush. I said to him, I have to recite Kiddush. He said, okay, do that. So it was the first time in the Vatican's history that the rabbi recites Kiddush. Of course, that he prepared special meal, a kosher meal for me. A lot of stories in order to tell you exactly, to describe you exactly what is the relationship between both of us. The other thing that you can do is to enter in Google, to put the two names, Pope Francis and my family name, Skorka, and you will find a little film, yeah, a record about talking, he and me talking about how our interfaith dialogue conducted us, moved us to a friendship. It's 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Both of us it was recorded in the Vatican when he was Pope, of course. Okay, now I would like to read about the importance of dialogue in a fractured world. Our world of today is a fractured one. Many social and political tensions are rising and social gaps are becoming wider. Civil discussion between people with different viewpoints has been replaced in many places by silence, because any conversation could turn into a bitter argument. Disputation is dividing people throughout the world, not only in the United States. In Argentina, we had the same, as you have here, that in the same family, you cannot come together. And why? Because I heard that now for the dinner of Thanksgiving Day, are families that are afraid how to organize that. So I gave them a very good advice. Put a cartel on your entrance. It's forbidden to speak about politics and religion. Is the same we had in Argentina. And I suppose that in many other places throughout the world. The United States is undoubtedly a cultural leader among the nations. It is an inevitable point of reference for humanity. Last month, several violent attacks, one of them related to anti-Semitic polemic, shocked all the inhabitants of the states and the great part of humanity. The continuous repetition of these kinds of horrible acts must raise the question, what is so seriously wrong in our society that such eruptions of extreme violence occur in its midst? Surely this is an urgent topic for social analysis and research. Extremist ideas have expanded their influence in different parts of the world, and their spokespersons have had considerable success in elections for public office in several European countries. Anti-Semitism appears again in the world through many awful manifestations. Anti-Zionism is the new face of anti-Semitism. To be sure, not all the policies of the various Israeli administrations were perfect and deserve to be criticized. But to deny the right of the Jewish people to have their own democratic states in their historical homeland is a form of anti-Semitism. In this point, the Pope Francis and me agreed totally. I am repeating his words. So he wrote in one of the emails that he sent me at a certain opportunity years ago, the person who denies the right of existence of the Jews and of the Jewish state could be defined as anti-Semite. But beyond anti-Zionist propaganda and in haste by it, there again appears the monstrous face of hatred against Jews in many scattered places. The attacker of the synagogue in Pittsburgh was undoubtedly influenced by the propaganda of hate against Jews that today is distributed around the world through the internet. In the mining of coal, there was a practice of sending a canary down into the mine to test the air quality. If it returned, then the mine was free of poison gases. If it failed to return, then the air was lethal. Jews have sometimes been called the canaries in the coal mine. Increased oppression of Jews was a sign of greater suffering and injustice for the larger societies of which they were a part. We should not remain as mere spectators of such things. Apathy is the worst attitude we can have. Pastor Martin Niemöller's words should be a constant warning for all of us. He said, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. To speak out, end of the quotation, to speak out, not to be silent. This is the approach demanded by Niemöller, but it is necessary to speak in a language of courage, respect, and integrity. I will tell you that at certain opportunity, we had a very serious, the projection of a very serious anti-Semitic problem in Argentina. And I wrote to my good friend. And not only that, he answered me by phone, but he gave me a document that in case that the former president of Argentina, because the problem could come through the former president of Argentina, Cristina Kirchner, to have a document from him criticizing anti-Semitism and expressing the worrying, and expressing, because I sent to him a letter, a written letter, and expressing his acknowledgement of the reception of the letter that I sent to him, commenting about what we heard from the mouth of the president, and what could be occur if a president of a land is expressing herself in such a way. The dwindling of respectful discourse in society is an indication that extremists are growing in influence, presenting their ideas as non-negotiable truth. There is a very special story in the Bible about the extraordinary character of human speech. And let us enter now a little bit in the Bible, in Divrei Torah, in Torah concepts. It is the very short story about the Tower of Babel. It is found in Genesis 9 from 1 to 9. In the immediately preceding chapter, we are told that the founder of Babel was Nimrod, the son of Cush, and that he was a mighty hunter before God. According to the rabbinic tradition, and also to Josephus, Nimrod was the one who urged the construction of the tower. Rashi explains that his reputation as a hunter refers to his capability to hunt and capture people's hearts. And the traditional rabbinical interpretation of the expression, he was a hunter before God, is that it means, before God means, in quotation signs, against God. In other words, Nimrod imposed his will on his people to build a tower which would reach the heavens and defile God. Why did God prevent them from building the tower? Certainly, it wasn't because God feared human beings and their abilities at constructing skyscrapers. What was disgusting in God's eyes was the futility of their devotion to this project, the arrogance of their leader, and the potent and compelling speech he imposed upon them. Rabbi Ovadia Sforno from the 16th century in Italy explains that the sin of the people of Babel was to try to impose one leader and one religion and one language over the whole of humanity. This would never permit the development of a person such as Abraham, who would question the beliefs of his contemporaries. Multifaceted language and the many languages in all their varieties are a requirement for the development of human spirituality. Control of the media is one of the major goals of those who seek dominance and power. So it was in Argentina and many other places in the world where tyrants or demagogic leaders are on the top. The possibility of sincere, honest, and respectful social discourse is seen as a dangerous threat by tyrants and demagogues. Despots of all kinds seek to disallow any ideas that differ from those they impose. God's punishments to the inhabitants of Babel was to diversify their languages, which means that everyone now had to learn both to their own language and them to have the work to understand his neighbor's language. The rise of terrible totalitarian regimes in the first half of the 20th century has become a subject of research for many scholars. What are its roots? Why and how did the great majority of people put their fate in the hands of one person who overpowered their minds? One scholar that you know him very well because he was born in Austria, but he came to the United States and published here a lot of books. Erich Fromm coined a special expression that he used as the title of a book in which he tries to explain the voluntary acceptance of tyranny, the fear of freedom. To live in freedom requires the courage to defend individuality and to enter into relationship with the other. To be submissive to a leader or a regime that regulates the lives of every person and gives a false sense of security is easier than the obligation to think and to decide for oneself. But this is not the way it should be according to the Bible. When they wandered in the desert, those who were liberated from Egyptian slavery criticized Moses for the loss of the good lives they had there in Egypt. Not one of them entered into the land of Canaan for this sin. God's desire instructs the Torah is for you. God's desire instructs the Torah is for human beings to serve Him and not to be servants of other creatures. The only ones who can serve God fully are free people. The way that free people communicate is through honest dialogue. What do I mean by dialogue? It is the proper and constructive use of the words and gestures to relate to one's neighbor with respect and ultimately with a feeling of fraternity. Our book, the book that some of you bought, is a book of dialogues. All the book is dialogues between the then Archbishop of Buenos Aires and me. I was then the rector of the rabbinical seminary. And the rabbi of Bnei Tikva, when we discussed the behavior of Nimrod earlier, we saw how the misuse of words, that lies and hatred can be spread by the human tongue. People can be transformed by the clever, insidious, and malicious misuse of words. In Nazi Germany, ordinary people separated themselves from their Jewish neighbors. Classmates, friends suddenly became enemies from one day to the other, from one day to the next. In the tractate of Arachin in the Talmud, we read the teaching of Rabbi Chama ben Rabbi Hanina about the meaning of a verse in Proverbs in Mishlei. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So is the verse in Mishlei. And he explains that it means that just as you can kill with the hand, so you can also kill with your tongue. In Jeremiah appears the verse, their tongue is a deadly arrow. On the other hand, it is also possible to heal spiritual wounds through words and to transform an enemy into a friend. It is possible to learn of the importance of the correct use of words and gestures to build relationship from the behavior of God. Through words, God created the world, as it is written in the book of Psalms, by the word of God, heavens made, and their entire host by the breath of His mouth. And another verse, for He spoke and it was done. He commanded and it stood firm. God has, according to the description of the creation in the book of Genesis, or the harmony of the nature depicted in Barchi Nafshi in the Psalms 104, God has a relationship with all creatures, but with human beings the relationship is special. The only creature that was created uniquely was Adam, understanding this word as the first couple, as it is defined in the book of Bereshit, of Genesis. After the eating of the forbidden fruit, and after Cain killed his brother Abel, God did not abandon them to their solitude. He asked Adam, "Where are you?" and asked Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" One of the worst punishments that the Torah warns Bnei Israel about is, "And I will surely hide my face on that day for all the evil which they shall have done." All the Bible, as Buber stressed, is a book of dialogues. A book of dialogues between the individual with himself, with all that are around him, and with God. Dialogue does not mean merely words. It means an empathic attitude through which you try to know and to understand the other. The verb to know is used in the Bible on many occasions as a synonym of love, and refers to the highest expression of love. It is the love between his husband and wife. And in Hosea, it refers to the love to God. The dialogue with God can only be made through dialogical attitude towards the people that are around us. Ever since the generation of Hosea, Micha, Amos, and Isaiah, the Bible has emphasized that only in a reality built on the values of social justice, mutual respect, mercy, and solidarity can God reveal himself to human beings. All the fanatics, all those who pretend to pay homage to God by killing others are acting against the biblical God, and if they are invoking God's name, they are blaspheming and distorting his revealed message. When a dialogue of words cannot be established, then bullets and bombs take its place. The only means that was conferred upon human beings to manifest through their actions the spark of the Creator inside them is through dialogue. The fragmentation we are seeing around us today, locally as well internationally, is a symptom of the loneliness that characterizes social life in many places, especially in the Western world. The dissolution of the family, the insane pursuit of material goods and power, the sensation of having almighty power are all alienating individuals from the spiritual dimensions of the reality. Kabbalah and esoteric or mystical things became a fashion rather than ways to come to know God in order to acquire power. In the last decades of the 20th century, after the debacle of fascism, Nazism, and communism, many members of Abrahamic religions went back to their roots and sources. Sometimes, however, they didn't retrieve the most profound and deepest expressions of their traditions, but turned to past narrow visions, making them even narrower. This is another symptom of seeing humans as replacements for God or as having omniscient knowledge. To dialogue with God or with people means to recognize the inestimable value and importance of the other. The last century witnesses terrible genocides and slaughters. Millions of people were murdered in 2 world wars, and many others across the planet. 2 atomic bombs devastated 2 cities and hundreds of thousands of their inhabitants in less than a few seconds. After the end of the Second World War, many people realized the massive amount of destruction that our weapons could now unleash. Many religious people, humanists and others with a special sensitivity to the meaning of humanity's spiritual greatness, tried to bring about a turning point in history. Now, 7 decades later, humanity continues facing the same problems. But some things have been achieved. In many places, the level of respect for others increased, and degrees of discrimination decreased. But the work ahead is enormous, and the subject of dialogue must be central in education and in the formation of the generations to come. The Hebrew Bible refers in its different books to a time of peace and high spirituality, the Messiah's time. The Messianic idea has had its positive and negative expressions in history. Many tyrants have considered themselves to be saviors of humanity. Others are using these concepts for the development of strange and, in certain cases, abhorrent practices, as it was the Frankism in Poland during the 18th and 19th centuries. But the vision that the prophets gave of the Messianic time is one of justice, spirituality, and love. This is the common hope that Jews, Christians, Muslims, and many others share. The hope that such a reality could be built through the combined efforts of all of us in order to transform alienation into dialogue in our reality. Martin Buber relates to us the following story in one of his essays. It gives a guideline regarding our attitudes towards our personal and common existence. And the story is this, and with this I finish. When I was a child, I read an old Jewish tale I could not understand. It said no more than this: outside the gates of Rome, there sits a leprous beggar waiting. He is the Messiah. This is the whole story. Then I came upon an old man whom I asked, "What is he waiting for?" And the old man gave me an answer I did not understand at that time, an answer I learned to understand only much later. He said, "He waits for you." Thanks you. Yeah, please.
So folks will be happy, Rabbi Skorka is happy to entertain some questions that might come from the floor. Sandy, why don't you go first?
Rabbi, we all know that this pope has been working with us in many, many previous ones. But in all due modesty, can you tell us some of the influences you might have had on him in your discussions?
The influences that I made on him in our discussions. When you maintain a real dialogue with a person, and our dialogue was a real dialogue. What means a real dialogue? We spoke from our heart. Is of course that you in some way make some influence on the other. For instance, there is a chapter in this book in which we analyze the Shoah. And he defined the Shoah in a very Jewish way. He told me, were many genocides in the 20th century, but the Shoah was unique. And when I analyzed the Shoah, you can read it. I told him, I cannot understand the Pius XII's attitude during the Shoah, because there is said that he saved a lot of Jews through his silence. But at the same time, so I told him, he condemned a lot of Jews through his silence. We spoke without barriers, respecting the other absolutely. We exercised a relationship of a great respect each throughout the other through our dialogues. So this is what both of us learn one from the other, or exercise one with the other. How to talk openly, how to say what really we feel without any consideration, oh, he is the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. No, we speak openly without political ideas. Political, I mean, without, I didn't refrain myself, without considerations, without any special considerations. And because that, I suppose, that he chose me as his partner, as his Jewish partner for dialogue. And we continue doing that. I don't know exactly what media it's going to be published in a short future. What I would define as an epilogue of this book, giving a summary about how continued our dialogue after we finished this book. This book was presented, we finished and presented this book in 2010. Is what occurs since 2010 until our days. I wrote to him in the last month, and I presented to him a summary, and he agreed to the summary, and he answered me, writing some, or adding some anecdotes, some very sympathetic phrases. But this is really when you are a friend of someone, there are a mutual influence from one on the spirit of the other. I invited him twice to come to my synagogue in Buenos Aires, and the second time he stressed me all the time for Slichot, for the first night of Slichot, and he, as Archbishop of Buenos Aires, delivered a speech, a bracha, a special salutation for the Jews for the coming New Year, and he told me at the second time, he emphasized, believe me, I felt deeply, I shared with you the tefillot, because we prepared, as you have here, a translation in Spanish, so in English, so we have a translation of the tefillot in Spanish, and he was very attentive to the musics, to the melodies, we have a choir also. So, but he said, I felt the spirituality. I shared with you. It's very difficult to say exactly. If you ask me in how way he influenced on me, yes. He has an attitude in his life of a great humility. And he has a very special spiritual attitudes. For instance, a certain opportunity, when we wrote the book, we had an editor working with us, a Jewish youngster who is a very good journalist. So he was the one who guided us in the different themes that we are discussing in the book. The three of us suffered the loss of a relative. I suffered the loss of my father-in-law. Bergoglio suffered the loss of his brother, and this boy of his mother. So the day, always I will remember, how the day that Bergoglio, we were the three together, and Bergoglio asked him, how is your mother? Because we knew that his mother is not in a good shape. So he said, she passed away. His immediate attitude, he closed his eyes, you could feel in this moment how he is praying for the soul of this person, and in this way how he related himself with this youngster. So these were different moments in which I appreciated and I learned something from him. And for sure that he learned from me. And if you ask an example, the first time that I met him in the Vatican is he told me, you know what, a couple days ago I spoke about the Tower of Babel, because this is and I quoted a midrash, and I said, I learned from a rabbi this and this midrash.
In your conversations with the Archbishop when you were both in Argentina, did the conversation ever come up of the possibility even that you might end up being the Pope?
I knew that he had possibilities to become Pope, because on the in the election of Benedictus the 16th, is Bergoglio ran on the second place. Yeah, Benedictus was before Bergoglio, and I knew that he made a great impact on all the bishops and cardinals of all America, from United States, from Canada, from all America, in a meeting that took place in Aparecida in Brazil, a very, very important meeting, when Benedict was Pope. He was one of the leaders of this meeting. So I knew that he has many possibilities to become Pope. When Benedictus resigned, immediately I said to my wife, my good friend is going to be Pope. And she said, no, no way, he is too old. No, no. I said, my good friend. Of course, I joke with her. He was a papable. One of the possibilities, one of the persons to be elected was he. But, okay, they elected him. You know, the first time that that we come together is he told me, how was the election? He said, when I entered into the Capilla Sixtina, the 16th chapel, chapel, how do you call it? Chapel, 16th chapel, yeah? Okay, I entered in my world and my spirituality. I already told you that he is a very spiritual person. He's living in his whole reality. So he told me, my mind, my world and my spirituality. And after the first election, because it's rounds of election, yeah, you need a number of votes. Okay, I had some votes, and a cardinal from Nigeria approached me suddenly and asked me, how do you feel? How was your health? And really I understood nothing. What is he asking me about? I told him, I'm very well. Many years ago I had an operation of a lung, but this was in the 50s. But well. And slowly the number of votes increased. Afterwards, approached me another cardinal and asked me, tell me, if you are going to be elected, are you going to accept? He said, in this very moment of the church, in this moment of so many conflicts of the church, the one who is going to be elected cannot refuse. Cannot refuse. Before the conclave is the name of the when they come together in the Sixtina Chapel. Conclave means in Latin with a llave, with a key, to close something, to lock something, because they are locked there. Is before this is they are living where he is living now in Santa Marta, and they come together and they listen to the different speeches that the different cardinals are giving for their colleagues. And it seems that he gave a very special, a moving speech. So he told me, oh, I realized that in the last election, before the finishing election, the last election of the different rounds of election, I received a lot of votes, and the Cardinal of La Habana in Cuba, from Cuba, told me this. Asked me, "Do you have your speech?" The speech that you delivered? He said, yes, I have the speech, but I improvised the speech. The only thing that I wrote was just the points that I have to develop during the 15 minutes that he had for the speech. But what I can do is I will prepare a copy, a Xerox copy, and I will give you. And the Cardinal of La Habana told him, you know why I am asking you your speech? Because I would like to have the speech of the Pope. He told me, then I realized that I'm going to be elected. He knew. After we wrote a book in 2010, during 2011 and 2012, till February, the beginning of February 2012, we recorded, means I, and an Evangelican one, that the Evangelican was the moderator of the programs. We recorded 31 programs of dialogue, because that I spoke about dialogue. This is the only thing that we have to be a mention live, to know how to express to ourselves, to God, and to the neighbor, to the one who is very, very close to you. So we recorded 31 programs for the television. Usually we used to record 2 programs in 2 hours. But in December, in 2013, he was elected. In December 2012, he was so tired. And because I suppose that he knew he was very related to Benedictus. And he was so tired and he was so worried. He looked so concentrated in himself that I suppose that he knew that he has possibilities to be elected as Pope.
There's a hand.
Alan, you have a strong voice, so you can just. Yeah. Here, you know what? Come on, here, Alan, here.
Strong enough. Maybe a little off, but Argentina is, I guess, known for a hotbed of Nazism. Recently, there was a movie come out several times about a capture of Eichmann. There's also a incident you mentioned before, what happened in Pittsburgh. You had a very tragic incident happening in Argentina where many Jews were basically killed. And then everybody sort of blames the Iranians. And in fact, they offered themselves to be part of the investigation, which I thought was kind of ludicrous. What do you think of that, and also not only two, but there's an investigator that he was going to supposedly come out with a short period of time with his analysis, and then he died, or he was killed. They said initially that he committed suicide, but it points to that he was killed. Can you comment on that, please?
I cannot say that Argentina is an anti-Semitic country, as was, for instance, Nazi Germany in the 30s. No, I cannot say that. In Argentina, are coexisting, are living together, are in coexistence. People with great democratic ideas, and people with fanatic ideas. Were in Argentina, and continue being, groups with anti-Semitic ideology, with an anti-Semitic ideology. Not so in such a dramatic way as it was, for instance, in the 30s and the 40s, even in the 50s or 60s. For instance, in the military forces, anti-Semitic ideas were very common. We had a military service, obligatory military service duty till 86, 87, something like that. And of course, that all kind of anti-Semitic expressions occurred among the in the military world in Argentina, or myths in Argentina. There was published a book about, with the testimonies, about the awful, horrible, and painful things that suffered the Jewish soldiers in the Falkland Islands by their superiors, by their Argentinian superiors. This changed in Argentina. If you ask why Argentina was a nest for Nazis, very simple. Perón, he had a fascist mentality, and his idea was, okay, I need all the people here. Nazis could help me. Nazis, if they are technicians, they could help me to develop, for instance, the Air Force capability, and it was. They brought to Argentina some specialists, as you have here a von Braun, so we had another one in Argentina. How Eichmann came to Argentina and how Mengele came to Argentina, we know now. In the times of the Second World War, Argentina didn't act as Brazil, for instance. They only declared the war against the Axis in the beginning of 1945, almost at the end of the war. They sympathized with the Nazis. Again, not in a totally way. The Argentine mentality is like an Italian mentality. Yeah, they're a very dynamic mentality. They are not like a German mentality. We have to kill the Jews, and they kill. No, sometimes yes, sometimes no. This is Argentina. Now, what occurred about the bombing of the AMIA the central community center in Buenos Aires, and about the bombing of the Israeli embassy. Of course, that the people who planned everything are people from Iran. Israeli security service knew and know very well who they were, and but they had an Argentinian connection. What was the Argentinian connection? People in Argentina who knew where to buy the material in order to prepare the bombs, and where to buy this and that, and how to move in Argentina, and how to get the necessary know-how of the place, because to destroy the building, a building of 5 floors and a very strong building, you have to know the plans of the building, to get the plans of the building. So the know-how was done by local people for money. Anti-Semites related to the fanatic Muslims and money. Why Nisman was killed? Because he put himself, he was to reveal the certain bad attitudes of the president, Christina Kirchner. The last situation is that he was killed, that it was a murder. This is the last, because till let's say 1 year ago, the idea was not so clear. It could be a suicide, not a suicide. Now what the judge, what we call the title of the research of the investigation is a murder.
We'll take a final question, if there is. Good. Oh, I was going to ask the final one myself, Bernie, but it's yours.
The Pope has spoken out on anti-Semitism and racism. What can he do more in his position to influence more of his flock around the world? What actions can he potentially take?
The problem is that he spoke, and a few days ago, November the 9th, the day in which we remember the 18th anniversary of the Kristallnacht, he spoke about anti-Semitism. And by the way, there is a newspaper in the Vatican named L'Osservatore Romano, and this day they publish an article that I sent to them in order to remember what occurred 80 years ago. Is of course that he remarks all the time that, and this is very, very important, anti-Semitism is anti-Christianity, and that in each, several times he stressed that in each Christian there is a Jew, and how he expressed and condemned very sharply what occurred here in Pittsburgh. But there is one point that it's very difficult for him to touch this point, which is the point of Israel. The point of Israel. Why?
because it's a very delicate political issue. And he must go step by step when he speaks about politically about Israel. But he did, when he visited Israel, something that no other Pope did this before. Something which is very, very important and was not put in the media in the way it should be, which is he paid honor to the memory of Theodor Herzl, putting a wreath of flowers on his tomb. On one side stood Peres, on the other side Netanyahu. I was present there because I was part of the official delegation, so each point that he touched in Israel, I was together with him. This is very important. He paid honor to Zionism, but this was not emphasized in the media. One of the terrible things we have is the media. The media, this is what I express in my speech. The media is an important tool for dialogue. And when you make distortions through the media, you are increasing anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, you begin speaking against Israel, and you finish killing people in Pittsburgh. One is related with the other. People are saying, no, we are against Israel, we are not against Jews. But those people who are speaking in this way, afterwards, they go and they attack Jews. Religious Jews, maybe not Zionist Jews, people who are not related directly to Israel. Because anti-Semitism is changing their face from generation to generation. We have the right to have our state. Of course that we cannot do everything in Israel, and we must be respectful of the Palestinians, but we have a great problem. From the side of the Palestinians, we had a Shalom Arshav movement. Such a movement we hadn't among the Palestinians. Rabin gave his life for this movement. From the other side, we have not a partner to make shalom. If we have, tell me please, who is it? Okay, of course, we cannot agree with Netanyahu in many things. But what is the answer? What is the solution really? And all the peoples who are condemning Israel are putting neft into the fire. Neft you use, yeah? Fuel into the fire.
So I think that Rabbi Skorka has given us very wise advice that come Thursday night, no discussions of religion or politics. But in my family, I confront a much larger problem, and that is that we have a son-in-law from Dallas, Texas, who is a Dallas Cowboys fan. In Philadelphia, from your earliest age, you're taught to, I won't even say the word in the synagogue, the Cowboys. And this year, it's going to be especially painful because they just beat us last week. But everybody's beating us, so. Anyhow, friends, read through this entire book because you'll gain much wisdom from it. But there was one sentence that especially touched me, and it's actually in the introduction where it's written, "True dialogue is at the heart of the thinking man's life and demands that each person tries to get to know and understand the person with whom they are conversing." I think we seldom do that. We argue on this level where getting to know that person is on this level. And maybe if we could go into the depths of understanding each other, we could understand and maybe even appreciate why they think, why they believe, what they believe. So, true dialogue is to get to know and understand the person with whom they are conversing. Rabbi Skorka, though English is your fourth language, we understood you very clearly tonight. And we are in awe of that because there are few people born in America, maybe there's one or two here tonight, but very few who have a fourth language or a third language or even a second language. If we can speak English properly, we're doing good. So I want to thank Rabbi Skorka for his wisdom tonight, Rabbi, for your humanity, for all that you've taught us tonight, and how to reach out to others in dialogue. And hopefully we can take from what we learned from you tonight and incorporate it into our lives. It's been so great to have you and Mrs. Skorka together with us. Great to have both of you. And this is an evening that I, and I think all of us, will long remember at Ohev Shalom. So our thanks to you. Friends, as I said at the beginning, we are Idel's guests at a lovely dessert reception, so please come in and join us. And those who would like to have Rabbi Skorka sign your books, he'll be happy to do that. So thank you, everyone. Be well. Be well.